to galacticconnection.com, one of the most popular blogs on the World Wide Web today for alternative news. Stay tuned for the latest information on our world shift from enslavement to galactic involvement, as well as current intel on any blockages impeding us from our sovereign birthright. Knowledge and self-mastery are key at this time. Our commitment is to present you with the latest breaking conspiratorial articles, off-world messages, exopolitics, cutting-edge technologies and sciences, and also an ever-significant intertwining of spiritual support and metaphysical scope that one needs to dive down the rabbit hole in search for truth with balance. We are truly on the horizon of a new golden age filled with the promise for more love, worldwide peace, and accelerated intuitive skills, where every living being can exist in cohesion and abundance. It is whatever we envision and dream this new world to be. I say to you now, let's redefine the new world to the beginnings of our own precious heaven on earth. Galactic Connection is here to provide the pulse of Mother Earth through an eclectic range of interviews each Tuesday afternoon from 3 to 4:55 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Station 2 on BBS Radio, expanding your perspectives on how we can once and for all take back our freedoms, our joy, and our connection with our mighty I Am presence. Our intention remains true to connect hearts and minds everywhere in order to obtain global unity and galactic and universal acceptance. Our discussions will continue to cover anything to do with galactic society and our involvement with our galactic brothers and sisters. Our guests are experts in their fields, and our radio shows have been coined as some of the most thought-provoking out there. In addition to our daily blog, which runs 365 days a year, we also offer a realm of healing services such as our world-renowned implant removal processes, our spiritual past life clearings, our galactic violet ray alchemy from Alexandra, who shares in the lineage of Merlin, and other cutting-edge healing technologies. Check our site out at galacticconnection.com now, sending you a wave of light, love, and inspiration, and a personal hug and thank you for listening to our Galactic Connection radio show and visiting our blog today. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2013, and I have a very special guest today, Edwin Harkness Spina, otherwise known as Mr. Ed. No, I'm just kidding. And Ed is an award-winning author, a speaker, and a mystic. And this is the part we really want to get into today, is his mystic background and perspectives on life. He has authored many books: Mystic Secrets Revealed, The Future Is Now, Escaping the Matrix, good God, 101 Great Ways to Improve Your Life. Are there any more, Ed?
Mystic Warrior, that's my flagship book.
Mystic Warrior, okay. And what I find really interesting about Ed is when I first met him, I was so fascinated with his mathematical background as a teacher and as a capitalist, an entrepreneur, a software designer, very scientifically oriented and yet a very spiritually, holistically thinking guy. So I want to welcome you, Ed. Thank you so much for your time today.
That's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad. And we're just going to kick back and have some fun today. It's a beautiful day up here in Northern California. I'm on a road trip today. Wow.
Beautiful. I think it's equally beautiful here in Southern California.
Yes, yes. Just a different kind of beauty, huh?
That's right.
So, Ed, you and I had kind of talked before about, just how we see the transitions going on because of these abundant energies that are pummeling the planet. And I really wanted to, before I got into anything else, I really wanted to see what your mystical perspective is on these current perspectives, these current energies, where do you see the human race going because of this increased light activity?
Right. Well, I'm not as sensitive to energies as some other people are. I don't get easily buffeted by the changes in the energy. But the one energy that had me the most impressed was actually right on the spring equinox. When we switched over on March 21st, I felt a shift. I meditated and had one of the best meditations I had in years. And I just realized that I had dropped, probably as the whole human race had dropped some layer of density, and we were more easily able to access the higher worlds. And that day was much more profound for me than, say, December 21st, 2012, or these eclipses that have been happening the last 2 weeks. So that was my biggest wake up.
I highly agree, and I don't know if you are aware of this, but today they are suggesting there's 3 more X-flare solar flares coming on. Can you get over that? I mean,
all good.
I know, it's all good. So tell me a little bit about, to have such a strong kind of mathematical and, scientifically oriented brain. What exactly took place for you to get on this amazing, mystical, spiritual path?
Well, one thing I want to defend all mathematicians, it was a joke in college, the mathematicians are not engineers. So we're not as rigid in our thinking. Even though I was a mathematician and very logical, I still was open-minded and looking to explore new theories, new ideas, and all sorts of new practices.
Well, and I agree with that, because if you don't grasp mathematics, you don't grasp the universe,
Right. Mathematics, Walter Russell was one of the famous mystic, said, music and mathematics were 2 keys to the universe.
Right.
I have no musical aptitude, but I do have mathematical aptitude.
Awesome. Well, so do you feel that that kind of created a buffer or a preparation for you to have some of the spiritual awakenings that you did?
Well, not necessarily, but I think it enabled me to interpret what was going on in a more logical way. And so I, in turn, can interpret it and then pass it on to people who are logical thinkers. I mean, people who are artists and caregivers, you just talk about energy, and they either get it or they don't get it, and it's instant. There's no thinking involved. Whereas a logical person, a lawyer, an accountant, an engineer, they automatically start thinking. Even if I do some kind of energy exercise with them, even if they feel totally blissed out, they'll start thinking. And as soon as they start thinking, it can take them out of that blissful state. So I have to be able to preface doing anything like this with the explanation for why this is, how the world is set up, how the universe works. So then when they do have the experience, it's logical and makes sense to them. And I think that's my gift, to be able to walk in both worlds, to take the logical side and then bring people beyond that to the spiritual.
Well, that's great. So you're basically presenting yourself as a bridge between those 2 worlds. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you is, my landing page on galacticconnection.com is all about unifying what I see are kind of the 3 specific trailblazers, and that's the UFO community, the spiritual community, and the conspiracy theory community. Do you feel that you're able to kind of bridge the gaps between the perspectives of those 3 areas?
Yes, I'm familiar with the writings in each of them. I identify most closely with the spiritual community, but even the conspiracy theory, you'd have to not be open-minded to not understand that things are not as they seem, as is portrayed on TV.
Correct. Well, so tell me, how did your walk begin?
Well, one thing that totally flipped me out is I had a girlfriend who sent me to Blockbuster to get a video. This was before they even had DVDs, and it was for dinner and a movie. So I came back. I had seen all the recent movies, and right next to the counter, it was before Blockbuster had weeded out all the non-mainstream material, was this whole display on Dick Sutphin's, all these different videos. One that struck my eye was Dick Sutphin's past life regression.
Wow.
And I didn't know much about reincarnation or anything like that. I knew what it was, but I never read it. But it said, if you're stressed out, this and that, this will calm you down. I said, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got this high pressure environment. Let me try it out. So we put it in the VCR. We watched it. He hypnotizes you with images. And then Dick Sutphin has a very deep, soothing voice. And he took us on a guided meditation. And I went into an altered state. And then he suggested go back to a lifetime that has relevance to this lifetime. And he asked a bunch of questions. What's your name? Where do you live? What country is it? What year is it? What's your job? What are you wearing? All these different questions. And I knew all the answers.
Wow.
So when he brought us back to waking consciousness, I just wrote down everything I could to remember it, because again, I was the mathematician, very logical.
Right.
I didn't just automatically assume this is a past life. And I went and I researched it. And I saw that it matched exactly. Everything was totally consistent. And I still wasn't totally willing to accept this is reincarnation. This is a past life remembrance. But I knew that there was no other way I could know all this information, but there had to be something beyond the physical, and that my education was incomplete. And that's one of the things that sparked me to start studying reincarnation, karma, metaphysics, all under the umbrella of mysticism.
What's your favorite topic within that realm?
Well, as I get more and more beyond the mind and into the pure energy and the pure blissfulness, the mysticism, which is the spiritual discipline aimed at direct communion with God or the ultimate reality, that's what most fascinates me. Beyond the intellectual games and understanding what's going on, just having that experience of being totally blissed out. That's what I look for, and that's what I try to share with other people.
So do you feel that we're going full circle back to maybe like a Lemurian age where that is the way they cohabitated, was in a blissful state with their co-creator?
Right. Well, no one knows exactly the Lemurian thing, but they were renowned for being much more spiritual.
Yeah.
And then we also had the Atlanteans, which were spiritual, but even more technologically oriented, and they were not balanced between the spirituality and technology. So there were obviously more advanced civilizations than we have today that preceded us. And so in that sense, yes, we are coming full circle. We're coming back to getting closer to God and to merging with that all that is, where everything's a blissful state.
Right. You mentioned something before. Were you considered a type A personality?
Well, I was never totally type A, but I had started a company where we were this was the company that actually was a sports collectibles business, where back in the mid-90s, early 90s, sports cards, baseball cards, football, basketball, it was like the poor man's stock market. And people were buying, Mickey Mantle rookie cards selling for thousands of dollars, and Honus Wagner cards bought by Wayne Gretzky for like $200,000. And so everyone was looking to see what the value of their collections were. So we had software that tracked all this. So it was stressful because the company wasn't profitable right away, and I had to go out and raise money, try to make sales deals, joint venture deals with publishers, things like that. So I was definitely stressed out, and that's what got my eyes. Oh, this is going to calm me down. Let me try it out.
Yeah. Is that something that you were comfortable with the sales background? I didn't know that, Ed.
Well, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to wear every hat, many hats, and an entrepreneur who can't sell is an unsuccessful entrepreneur.
God, isn't
so you have to learn by default.
I so relate to that. So what do you think was the longing within yourself when you picked up that videotape? What is it that we are longing for that we don't have within the
It's just that, yes, innate in everyone is that urge toward oneness, toward going back to the source, to the creator. Everyone has it. They may not be aware of it, but that's what's driving our entire spiritual evolution, over lifetimes. We had everything happens in cycles. We had the out-breath where everyone went away from God, descended into matter, into the deepest depths of matter, and now we're on the in-breath. We're on our way back toward God, and that's the soul urge that's driving everyone back toward oneness.
Yes, yeah. Now, you had told me some very interesting stories about one of your primary teachers. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? I thought that was very fascinating.
Okay, well, about this time when I got the Dick Sutphin video, and suddenly I was so gung-ho, I needed to know everything there was to know about spiritual subjects, I attracted the attention of my first mentor. And I call her Sophie after the Greek goddess of wisdom, because she shuns all publicity. You can't sign up for a weekend seminar with her. You can't get coaching by her. You can't even pay her, no matter how much money you have, unless she decides to help you.
Right.
And she has to pick you.
Very cool.
Well, she saw it was the earnestness with which I wanted to know this material is what attracted her. And so she kind of took me under her wing, opened me up to a world that I didn't know existed. And, some of the exercises that she had me do, one of the ones that right away, she says, okay, I was in her office, and she reached down and took a jar full of quartz crystals, single terminated garden variety quartz crystals. She said, okay, pick 4. So I took 4, and she told me to go home at night, put them at the corners of my bed, my 4 corners with the points toward my head. So I put them there. And as I'm sleeping at night, I could feel as if there were invisible rays of light coming from the corners, from the points of each of these crystals to my third eye in the center of my forehead. And as I was moving around, I could see them moving around with me. And it was a strange phenomena. The next day she says, okay, turn the crystals so they point to your feet. So I pointed them at my feet. And the same thing happened that night. The 4 rays are all pointing toward my third eye. The third day she says, okay, bring the crystals into me. So I gather up the crystals, and when I gather them up and put them in my hand, I see that when they're pointing in the same direction, they're like magnets. I could roll it across a table, with them pointing in the same direction. If I reverse them and put them next to each other, they would stick together like bar magnets.
Wow.
And I said, not only had I never seen quartz crystals magnetized before, but especially I'd never seen them magnetized remotely. So that was like the first thing, like the world is not as it seems, Ed. Pay attention. You're going to learn something.
So how were you able to apply that exercise to your spiritual walk now? What profound light bulb went off as far as the way you interacted with the world, with nature, with people? Just the whole part of magnetism.
Right. It's the understanding that the world that we've been led to believe is just like it's a belief construct. It's not how things really are.
Right.
And when you can let go of all these limiting beliefs and these beliefs that are seemingly true but not necessarily always true, just let them drop, there's so much more potential that can happen. And it just forced my mind open even more, because I had the direct experience to know, not theory. It wasn't a theoretical understanding. It was I knew. I can see things are not as they are.
Right. And therefore your promotion of escaping the matrix, which I'm really drawn to, one of the things about the matrix that we often discuss amongst ourselves is the amount of dogma that's within the spiritual community. And I was wondering if you had, say, a student and he or she came to you and said, wow, if I look at something that's really painful, I'm giving it energy, what would you say back to her?
Well, it's like Carl Jung says, unless you make, and being enlightened does not mean, being surrounded purely with light. It means taking the light and making the darkness light. So you have to look at things. You have to look at these conspiracy theories, and they're not really theories, but the self-dealing and the corruption, and bring it to light. And that's the age we're in now, the age where all that is hidden is being revealed. So that's the real enlightenment, bringing light to the darkness. So you don't just walk away from it or avoid it. You shine your light on it.
I really think that's a transition that the spiritual community is going through right now. Wouldn't you say? I mean, instead of the whole I've got to feel good and all peace, love, and grooviness, which is great and all, but we are here to, like you said, to transmute that darkness.
Right. Right.
Our own.
As human beings, we exist on many levels, and our job is to pull in the energy from the highest levels, bring it down to earth, and ground it here on earth. So you bring heaven to earth.
Exactly.
It's not to avoid. And then these people that say, oh, I'm too spiritual to do anything material. That's not spiritual. Spiritual encompasses everything. And your job that's why you came to earth, to anchor this energy on the physical plane.
Right.
So if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job as a spiritual being, and certainly not a spiritual master.
We are definitely on the same page there. In fact, I think one of the things that really shifted me was when I read Barbara Hand Clow's book, The Ninth Dimensions of, I'm having a brain lapse, but she talks about the chakras of the body and how the first and second chakras are actually energetically within the earth.
Okay. Well, everyone has different theories as to where these chakras are. That's why, in general, I stick with the more Western approach of the energy centers being the actual glands or organs that animate your body. And, those that we know exactly what the organs do, and we know now what the esoteric functions of these organs do, and how by cleaning those out, you're again able to connect more with your innermost self, with your highest aspect, your divine aspect, your I am presence, by whatever name you give it. And that's, what you want to bring to Earth and share here on the physical plane.
Right. I agree with you. I think what I was trying to get to was I just loved the perspective of seeing ourselves interlinked with her. You know how everybody refers to her as Mother Earth.
Right, right.
Then that would be a question for you, is if you had somebody come to you and say, why does everybody call her Mother Earth? What would be your response?
Well, the Earth is the negative, not negative in a sense of being bad, but the negative nurturing aspect. The sun would be considered the positive active aspect. You got your yin yang thing, and here we are. We need both the Mother Earth and the sun to exist in this world.
Right. So what if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, Ed, if I don't pay attention to something, then it really doesn't exist"?
Well, it may not exist in their world. It may still influence them because it is influencing everything around them. You can't not look at the fire. Your house is on fire and say, "Oh, I don't believe in the fire." Or what's the thing here? The person said, "Oh, you got thrown into a cage with a tiger." And he said, "Tiger, you do not exist. You do not exist. You do not exist. You're a figment of my imagination. You do not exist." And the tiger ate him and said, "Well, now neither do you exist."
Great analogy, Ed. Oh, you're too much. What do you feel as far as the whole spiritual community is so plagued with prosperity issues? And, what is your thoughts on that, especially approaching a more abundant and wealthy lifestyle and doing it where we're bridging the material world with the spiritual world, and we're at peace with that?
Right. Well, from a pure business marketing standpoint, you get paid for something that you provide of value. The problem right now is that many spiritual people are providing things of value, but a lot of the world does not recognize it as being valuable. I mean, most people don't even acknowledge that energy center clearing, and that energy healing is possible. So, it's not as big a market for those that have been indoctrinated to think that the regular traditional doctor is giving you drugs and that's the way to get healthy. Well, so I think that's all changing. Yes.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, what do you think about those that feel very strongly that they shouldn't get paid for healing?
Well, there are some schools of thought like that, but I say, there should be an exchange of value that for whatever you do. And if someone gives you a healing, if someone can bliss you out and take away your stress and fear and anger, then yes, why shouldn't they get compensated for that? I think it's perfectly legitimate. There's no reason not to.
There is a real conflict with a lot of healers for that. But
yeah.
So now, what about fear about the Galactics? Fear about the communication, the ET contact, and that maybe exposing them to some negative energies.
You're talking about negative ETs or just in general, the fear of something new?
Probably both, actually.
Right. Well, I think on Earth here, about 10% of the population had previously reincarnated in other star systems. I think that Brad Steiger's work, that was his estimate. He calls them star people.
Wow, you only think 10%, huh?
Yeah, about 10%.
Okay.
So those people should have a familiarity with that. And from a purely open-minded, logical standpoint, it would be insane to think that our world is with billions of stars and galaxies and everything else, that our planet is the only one that would have life on it. And if our sun is a relatively new sun, there are other suns that are way older than ours. So wouldn't it make sense that those other suns would have planets where the life has evolved far beyond our life here? And that's some of the spiritual teachings point to that, and they point to our ancestors and from the Pleiades, Orion, Arcturus, Sirius, the zillion and one star systems that all have more advanced life forms than what's on Earth here.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. So how do you communicate with the galactic light beings?
My meditations, sometimes I hear voices in my head, especially if I'll do my energy center clearing stuff to get a clear channel. And when I know I have a clear channel is when I feel that my crown open as if there's a portal of light coming out of the top of my head. Whenever I have that feeling, then I know I'm getting good information. If I'm just receiving information through my third eye, in the center of my forehead, the tingling and that, it could be from anyone, could be from a human on Earth, could be from anyone. It's not necessarily sound or truthful. But when I have that crown open wide and I get that sensation, then I feel like I'm getting good information. And oftentimes it could be from our brothers and sisters on the higher worlds or your own higher self communicating with you.
That's a really good point. Now, what about for the seeker who just so much so wants to step into their gifts, but they're really questioning the gifts that they already have? For example, I know someone right now who's very gifted with psychic abilities, but because of the fact that, this isn't something she makes money doing, this isn't something that she's going out and giving readings, but then when she gets a hit, she's possibly doubting, hey, how do I know that this is real? What would you say to her?
I say do scientific experiments. Use the logical part of your mind as well. When your phone rings, before you look and see who's calling, just think, okay, is this Jim? I think it's Jim. And you look, oh, it's Jim. And there's your confirmation. And the more you practice things like that, the more you'll hone your gifts. But you'll also get that confirmation, that logical confirmation that, yes, that's way beyond the laws of chance. I have 200 people in my Rolodex or in my cell phone index, and I picked Jim, and here it was, Jim calling me.
Right.
So, that's what I did when I had my mentor, Sophie. I didn't take anything blindly from her. I would measure. We would, at the end of my time with her, most of our contact was telepathic. And, she would say, call me at 9 o'clock. And 8:45, very often I'd feel like a tingling in the center of my forehead. I'd sit down on a lounge chair. We'd connect, and we'd have a conversation just like we're having.
Right.
Then she'd say, okay, are you going to call me? No need. You answered all my questions. But then on the occasions where we did get together, I would confirm what she said to me telepathically to make sure that I wasn't imagining things just like any logical person would do. When you said this, was that? Yes, that's true, blah, blah, blah. And so, you use your mind, but use it to expand and to prove that your intuitive abilities are correct. Don't use it just to doubt. Doubt, limits the abilities.
Right. And it's like you're knocking up against the programming.
Right.
When you come here.
And the whole world here is geared toward not opening up your abilities. This is a very tough place to try to gain enlightenment or to tap into your intuition. They poo-poo it. When Reagan was using an astrologer to plan meetings and things like that, he was ridiculed. And yet, the people who are worth way more money than any of the presidents and who have way more influence, they have astrologers working for them all the time.
Exactly. And on top of that, Ed, they're fascinated by it, yet they don't want to admit it.
Right. That's one thing my mentor told me. She says, when you see someone really vehemently denying it, you can be sure that they are using those, psychics.
Right. Well, speaking of your mentor, Sophie, if you were to choose like the top 3 types of exercises for someone to open up their psychic abilities, what would they be? She did her own unique thing that I couldn't translate. And basically what she said to me is like, don't worry. Because I said, look, I want to have those gifts like you have. What do I have to do? She says, don't worry. You'll remember. Mm-hmm. So it was remember. And I think that's with everyone here. We came from a much higher place before we descended into this physical matter. Mm-hmm. And if we can kind of remember that, or when, like you said before, go full circle back to it, those gifts will reappear. Now, what I do is a modification of what she taught me in that is open up the energy centers, because that's how your higher self communicates with your mind and your body, through these energy centers, often called psychic centers. And for your psychic ability, the 2 most important are the pineal gland and the pituitary gland in the center of your brain. Those 2 account for 75% of your psychic ability. Interesting.
And if you keep those clear, if you can clear them out, or some people, they call it activation, they make a fancy name for it, but if you clear it out in the easiest way is energetically, you clear it out, that's when you're going to get that tube of light coming out of the top of your head when you have that good connection. And when your third eye is cleared, you're going to get the signals will be clear that you receive. And whether they're good or bad, you have to use your discernments.
Correct. Anything else?
Well, I'm saying that was one of the lessons in my book, Mystic Warrior. In this book, people are practicing telepathy, remote viewing, astral projection. There are a lot of mystic masters, and the hero has to develop his abilities in order to save the world from a nuclear bomb threat. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that he learns is when he's getting these clear signals from someone that it doesn't necessarily mean that they're true, and that people who are gifted in this way, they can just as easily lie using telepathy as they can with words.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about the government uses that all day long.
Right. But for someone who's naive, it was a shock to me to learn that, and so I incorporated it into my novel.
Right. Tell me a little bit more about Mystic Warrior.
Okay, Mystic Warrior, the hero's an entrepreneur trying to make it big, and he has all this bad luck, and he can't figure out why he's having all this bad luck. People that promise money aren't delivering. Other people are dying under mysterious circumstances. Then he meets his mentor, and she leads him to understand that what's going on is there's a team of mercenaries with a past life vendetta against him, and that they've been monitoring him and making his life miserable with the hopes that eventually he'll be so powerless that he'll join them, because they recognize he's a powerful spiritual being. He just doesn't know it yet. So they know that down the road they'll try to recruit him, but first we have to beat him up a bit. And then eventually when that didn't work, then they have to try to kill him. But by then he's got the spiritual power to fight back. So in this case, a lot of the battles, there's physical battles, like on Earth. There are physical battles, political battles, legal battles, but there are also spiritual battles that happen on the higher planes. And the one who wins those higher battles is the one who can go to a higher level of vibration. When you're in that semi-dream state, when you're not sure if it's a dream or if you're actually on some higher plane, the astral plane or whatever, the way the dream unfolds is the one with the higher energy makes it happen in the way they want. So that's when people say raise your vibration, that's, you just have more power. It's law of physics.
Right.
Power is proportional to your frequency. More frequency, more power.
Right. Very much so. How would you define the dream world versus, the reality of waking up and living here world?
Well, I like some of the Hindu teachings. They say it's very almost impossible to tell the difference. Even your physical world is like a dream world compared to the true essence of what is. But from a more practical standpoint, I think what you're getting at is the dream world, things are more etheric. People can fly in their dreams. You can do things that you may not think are possible in the physical world. And that's because not all the same physical laws apply on the astral plane.
So are we really flying then?
Well, we're flying. Our psychic bodies are flying. I mean, that's not how the remote viewing program works, but that's how the astral projection works. You can leave your body and go to different places and be there like instantly, and you have it. It's it's some aspect of your higher spiritual bodies that go there, and it varies with different people. Some people leave with their etheric body, some people leave with the higher bodies, and so you are flying. You're instantly manifesting or being somewhere wherever you want to be.
So do you feel that it's also a reflection of other parallel lifetimes?
When you mean?
Let's say, supposedly we are living a lot of different realities all at once, correct?
Yes.
So would you say that when you're dreaming, you're tapping into some of those other timelines?
Well, when you're dreaming, you don't have the baggage of the physical body, then it's more easy to connect with past and future selves, to go to higher states. So in that respect, yes. And then, well, the higher you go, eventually, depending on the nomenclature, maybe fifth density is where everything is now happening simultaneously. And when you get to that state, then you can tap into your past and future lives equally and learn from them and bring them back, hopefully bring them back to Earth and share the wisdom you've accumulated.
You know, I cannot wait for that moment. Bring it on, you know? Oh my gosh. So, I mean, do you think that anybody can learn to do this? And do you feel that the Mystic Warrior book in particular is a good step forward in applying those kind of practices?
Yes. Well, the first step of learning anything is the awareness that this exists, that this world exists. And that book lets you know it exists in a fun way. It's a fast-paced adventure story.
Yeah.
But when you read it, people, recognize, wait, there may be a hint of truth to this. Even if they don't readily admit it consciously, they know subconsciously it resonates with them, and they know this is possible. In fact, there's a fascinating story how I got my editor. I was introduced to him, before the book was published. Obviously, I needed a professional editor, and I talked with him, and he had been a TM meditator for 32 years at that time. He never missed a day meditating in 32 years. So, and I loved talking with him, and he was a good editor. So I said, let me send you, part of my book, and you can read it, and then, maybe you'll edit it. He goes, oh, I'm so busy. I got 5 clients right now at different stages. I doubt I'll be able to get to it. And I said, please, just take a look at it. Okay, send me some. So I sent it to him. A few days later, he calls me back. He says, oh, my God, you wouldn't believe what happened. I said, what's that? He said, I'm in bed, and I'm having a conversation with my friend Mary. And Mary was one of his spiritual mentors. I said, yeah, so what's odd about that? He goes, no, you don't understand. Mary wasn't there. We were having a conversation telepathically. And when I read your book and I saw that people were doing this in the ordinary course of business, I knew it was possible, and I just did it. And I jumped out of bed. This is the part I talked about before, where logically you want to confirm what your intuition's telling you.
Yeah.
He called her up on the phone and said, did we just have this conversation? Is this what? Yes, yes, yes. Word for word, she repeated what they had just said. So he knew. He was, okay, sold. I'm going to edit your book. That's we're going to do this. So that's the kind of thing that's possible. Once you become aware of what's possible, then it becomes possible. If you think you can't, then you're right.
Yeah. And the life that I live right now is so synchronous. All I have to do is kind of think something, and it's already drawn into my field. It truly is a much more blissful way of living.
Right.
It's incredible.
Right.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when you're in a heightened state of consciousness, if we could see everything, if we could merge with the oneness and be, omnipresent and all that, everything would be a synchronicity, because everything is only in this one thing. So everything is by definition a synchronicity. It's only when we step down to this 3D world that things look to be separate events and they're not connected. And we try to ascribe cause and effect, but in fact everything is connected.
That is really good, Ed. I like the way you stated that. So now, what is your daily practice? What exactly does your day consist of in staying on your spiritual path?
Well, I clean myself out regularly, using cleaning out the energy centers, and I can do it very quickly, like in 2 or 3 minutes. And I do this throughout the day, constantly throughout the day, because I can be on my computer connecting with someone on an email and think about what they're experiencing, and I can take on some of their energy just by the act of tuning into them. So, and if they're in trouble or that, then I have to clean myself out to make sure that I don't suffer from the same stress that they're suffering from. So I do that throughout the day. And then, I'll meditate, I'll go for a walk, just anything where you're not just totally thinking is enough to get you into, help evolve you spiritually.
Well, do you feel that everybody needs to meditate, or do you feel that that's kind of an older way of? The reason I'm saying this, and I know it's going to sound crazy for people when they hear this, but it seems like we're transitioning to a new perspective of connecting to our inner selves. And the reason I say that is because of the fact that there's so much more light on the planet. We don't necessarily need to just sit, meditate, go within to become very connected.
Right. It's becoming easier and easier to be connected. I agree with you 100%. And you don't necessarily have to meditate. But in my case, I do it especially when there's a big decision to be made. I always meditate. I never make a decision rashly. That's the logical side, the prudent side. I always meditate and wait for that channel in the center of my head to get that, and then I'll ask the question, should I move to Phoenix? Should I marry this woman? Should I take this job? Whatever that question is, I always want to be in that meditative state, because that's where you're going to get the cleanest information, most free of distraction. But I agree with you also that that's becoming less and less important for everyday living or everyday functioning. You're always connected.
Yeah, and it also seems like, do you often find that when you're walking amongst nature, at the parks and trees and things, I feel like I'm being cleaned out just by being in their mere presence.
Yes, yeah. Beautiful pine forest, pineal glands, the connection that helps awaken your psychic ability, just hanging out in pine forests.
That is such a good connection. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
God, that's a good point. So, you made a really good point, and that is about protection. And I feel that there are a lot of people right now complaining about being under psychic attack because of the compression that Cobra talks about.
Right.
What do you think is going on with that? And, what's a better way to assist people in feeling more protected and pulling down their protection?
Well, ultimately, your best protection is when you raise your vibration up high enough. No one wants to mess with you. The dark side doesn't want to. They're going to get beaten up. Like I said before, when you have one of these spiritual battles, the one who has the higher vibration wins.
Right.
And so that's what you want to get to that point. And the best thing I can tell people is to do things like my energy center clearing, because not only does it clear out your energy centers and flush your energy bodies of all these discordant thoughts and feelings and emotions, many of which may not even be yours, but it actually has energy in it that can pump your energy up. It'll pump it up. Your body will hold on to it for a few days, and it will slowly come down again. But you'll be better off than you started.
I have to say, I experienced that with you, and it was awesome.
Yeah, it's thanks to my mentors, my first mentor, Sophie, for making it possible, bringing me awareness and making me sensitive to this. And then my second mentor, Tommy, who had a near-death experience, and when he came back, he had way more energy than anyone I've come across. And over the course of working with him for 2.5 years, he would pump my energy up just like I'm describing. He'd pump it up, it would slowly come down. The following week, he'd pump it up, it would slowly come down. But each week, it was ratcheting upwards in a cumulative effect, and I would have more and more energy. And, that's just it lets you become more you. And that's our goal here on Earth.
So basically, we're learning from that dissipation of energy, so to speak. We're hanging on to that which we've accumulated. So it's not like we're starting from ground zero.
Right. Well, that's what the energy clearing. It's not a complete tabula rasa, blank slate, but it flushes a lot of the stuff out of your energy fields, because whatever thoughts you're thinking, you're going to automatically attract more of those same thoughts. If you watch the news and you're watching thoughts about, oh my God, the murder rate is so high, this neighborhood is not safe, you're going to attract experiences that match that to make the universe is going to try to make that picture you have in your mind happen. So if you don't want that, flush all those thoughts away, fill yourself with love, absolute, unconditional, infinite, divine love, and attract more things that are pure, loving, and blissful into your life. It's straightforward.
Well, this goes back to the question I had asked you before about, when you're looking at, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to look at the news. I don't want to look at any current events. I don't want to look at that stuff because that's painful and I'd be feeding it energy. But isn't it really important that we, as the light workers of the world, stay in that neutral place and be the observer? Yes,
you want to be detached from it. You want to get to the point where you could watch it if you choose, but be detached and recognize that it's not the truth. It's one tiny aspect of the truth that they're trying to feed you to make you fearful and prevent you from going to higher worlds and from attaining your enlightenment, your awakening. So in general, I do recommend people not watch the news because it's not even news anymore.
Right.
200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson had a quote. He said, if you don't, in this case was read the news, if you don't read the news, you'll be uninformed. If you read the news, you'll be misinformed.
Yeah.
That's exactly the truth today. If you don't read them, you'll be uninformed. But you'll be better off than if you're misinformed by some cockamamie story that they're trying to get you to believe that has no logical basis. And then the journalists are trained or not trained or told, don't ask any probing questions or don't use your judgment because you'll get fired. We'll replace you with some other lackey who will ask the same stupid questions that they're all asking.
So, Ed, tell me how you really feel about this.
Yeah, in case it's not clear. It's a joke. I hardly watch the news, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
But when I watch it, I look at it as like a comedy show. And the ultimate was when during the presidential election, when the only time you could get any faintly accurate news was watching Jon Stewart on a comedy show. That's the only real news you could get was on his show. Everything else was fake. And that's like it's an insane world when that happens.
Either that or Saturday Night.
Yeah, when the comedians are the only ones telling the truth, then you know something's not right.
It's really scary then, yeah. So what do you usually advise people if you were to give them a good tip in attaining that ability to stay neutral and come from a place of lack of duality? What would you say?
Once again, you want to raise your vibration. People, go as you increase your vibration, you're going from focused on the physical to the emotional to the mental, and that's where a lot of people get stuck. They think too much. Mm-hmm. And thinking is a gift that we get from, God, that one of human beings all have. But thinking is not enough. You got to go beyond the thinking to using your intuition, where your intuition is guiding you, and your thinking becomes a tool of your higher self to verify what your intuitions are telling you and to act in the appropriate manner. So your objective is to go beyond, to detach from emotions. You can feel these emotions, you can experience them, but then realize that's not who you are. You're that divine presence that has a body, that has emotions, that thinks thoughts, but that's not who you are. And just knowing that and striving to tap into that I am presence, divine aspect is what you ultimately want to do. Right.
I've spent a lot of time reading a lot of Hermetic teachings, and they refer to the all as the mind. So what do you feel about that?
Well, again, it's levels of the mind. We exist, I'll go through my whole short explanation. There is only the one thing. In the mystic world, all is one. There's only the one thing. The one thing is commonly referred to as God. Every religion says, God is omnipresent, all-knowing, all-powerful. The only way that God could be all-present, and present everywhere is if it's only one thing. You can't be two, because then what would divide God? It has to be the one thing. So, okay, if God is the one thing and there's only the one thing, our universe exists. Where does it exist? It has to exist in this one thing. Where does it exist? More specifically, it exists in the mind of God.
Right.
Now here's the analogy. I wrote Mystic Warrior. Mystic Warrior is a novel. One of the characters, Alec Thorne, he's the hero of the novel. Before this book was ever typed up or printed, that whole story, that world existed in my mind. I am the God of that universe. Now, subsequently, I published the book. People read it, and they all get a feel. They feel like they know Alec Thorne. Alec Thorne almost has an independent existence outside of me. People could predict how he would react under different circumstances. But what gives him life is the divine spark that I gave him. I created him. So now here's one of Jesus' expressions that is now made simple. Alec Thorne is in me because I created him. The whole universe that he lives in is in me. And I am in him because I'm the divine spark that gave him existence. And that's when Jesus said, he is in me and I am in him. He's not just talking about because he's a special person or an avatar or anything like that. He's just saying this is the truth for every man, woman, and child on earth. You are in the one thing. You are a part of God, a tiny aspect of, a single point of awareness in this oneness, and also God is in you.
Right.
And, Shakespeare said it, we are all actors on the stage. It's the same thing. In the mind of God, this is where our entire universe exists.
Ed, I love the way that you explain things. I think you really reach people with your, I hate to say simplicity, but you just make everything so understandable.
That's if you know what you're talking about, you should be able to explain it. If you can't explain it, that doesn't mean. I get upset when I hear these people with often with foreign accents to make them even more unintelligible. Utter things, and they go, "Oh, he's so smart. I don't even understand what he's talking about. He's so smart." That's not doesn't mean he's smart. He's not. If he was smart, you would understand it. He'd be able to explain it to you. So that's a pet peeve that I haven't advanced enough spiritually to get over.
Well, and we put so much emphasis on intellectualism, when intuition is the name of the game.
Right, but the intuition, if it tells you this is how things are, then the intellect should be able to explain it to someone. That's the real intellectual. To make the complex simple is the sign of a genius.
Yeah. Well, so tell me a little bit more about your communications. Are you still in communication with Sophie now, or is she no longer in your current life?
Oh, no. She got me to a point where I mentioned we were communicating telepathically, and then when she got me to the level that she thought I should be at, she just disappeared.
Interesting.
As if she never existed.
And how about Tommy, your other mentor?
Tommy is still around, yes. Yeah, I talk to him regularly.
Because even if you're a master, you still need another master to keep challenging you, huh?
Right, or just your peers. Even if you're peers, you want to surround yourself with people that are not yes men or sycophants, but people who will challenge your assumptions and bring new ideas to you. That's the essence of all growth. If everyone's the same, if everyone has the exact same ideas, there's no growth. There's nothing to stimulate the new ideas. You have to have difference. That's a fundamental law of the triangle in mystic terms.
Right.
Thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
Mother, father, child.
Right.
If it's just two mothers, there's no child going to be born. Two fathers, same thing. You got to have some difference. It doesn't have to be polar opposites, but opposites are usually the easiest. So that's why that's the basis of all creation. Have to be two differences. Otherwise, if there's no difference, there's no gradient, you're not going to be able to create anything new.
I like that.
And that's what people ask. And the corollary is that here on Earth, and at least in this 3D world, we have the positive and we have the negative. It's all part of the oneness still. So even the negative is part of the oneness. Even the oneness, as Jesus would say, the sun shines on saints and sinners alike. So they're there. So there's got to be a reason for them. And the reason is they're stimulating people to rise to the occasion, to develop their spiritual powers. Who knows? They may be in some ways the greatest teachers because they've chosen to be bad and do evil things, what we consider evil in this world, and yet it's stimulating people to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, I read the other day and it just really hit me. Somebody wrote in and said, how do we cope with the atrocities on this planet? Why would there be so many atrocities surfacing on this planet? And the response was, well, we've gone to such depths of not knowing who we are that it took something so severe as that to wake us up.
Right. Right. I agree with you.
So, how would you define a master?
Well, I try to avoid labels.
Okay.
And that's one of the first things I say is if someone tells you they're enlightened, they're not. Just a rule of thumb. And that's one of those things where the spiritual arrogance comes in, where people pronounce how great they are and how wise they are, and they're a guru and they have followers, and then any difference of opinion is taken as a personal affront on their spiritual mastery, and we want to avoid all that.
Right. And at the same time, what I was going to say was, I feel we all are masters. We all have something to bring to the table.
Right. I mean, ultimately, like I said, we're all single points of awareness in this oneness.
Exactly.
We all have that divine spark, so no one is better. Some can be more aware of their divine nature and bring more of that divine nature into their physical life and being. That's obvious. Not everyone's at the same level.
Yeah.
So we have to acknowledge that. But as Jesus said, if you follow what I tell you, you'll do all these things and more. Okay, that's good advice. He seems to know what he's doing. Let's follow him.
Well, so Ed, we're getting to the end of the hour, but what I wanted to ask you was what are you doing in the near future? What are you looking forward to? Are there any announcements that you'd like to make?
I'll be at the Alchemy event in LA. I think it's June 15th, that weekend of June 15th. That would be a good place for people to come and meet with me and maybe get a little mini energy clearing.
Oh.
And I may be going up to Mount Shasta to visit some friends in the next week or two, but that's not necessarily a public event, but I'm looking forward to that. Mount Shasta is another, well, like you talked about before, Lemurian remnant.
Yeah. And what do you feel that we have to look forward to, with this new portal blowing wide open on the 24th and 25th?
I think people are going to continue to shed layers of density. The lower densities are just going to shuck off them, and they're going to be able to attune more and more with their higher self, with their divine nature. It just becomes easier and easier, like getting rid of a ball and chain. Okay, you can go to higher levels. You can connect, and you just have to know that that's possible and choose to do that. That should be your conscious goal as well as that solar is driving you back toward that state.
Yeah, a lot of past life density stuff for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, go ahead.
I was saying, even past lives. I mean, it's an indicative of how your perspective influences what you think is true.
True.
Like from one perspective, people think, oh, I don't believe in reincarnation. Then you get a little bit more knowledge. You say, oh, reincarnation exists. Then you get a little more knowledge. You go, wait a second. If everything's simultaneous in this fifth density world, then what's the past life and what's the future life? Everything's happening at the same time. So it's like a cycle, but it's spiraling upwards. Obviously, the person we're understanding that everything is happening simultaneously has a greater understanding than the person that thinks, no, we only exist here in one lifetime, and once you're dead, you're dead. That's it. So it's, again, the circle, but it's spiraling upward. And that's the whole spiritual evolution. That's what everyone's going through.
Yeah, I think one of the most the biggest turning point for me was when I really perceived energy is nor created nor destroyed.
Right.
Right. That was like a big aha.
And the other thing, everything is energy. That's the thing. That's how you can get around these physical things. Like, I heal someone who's in London, and here I am in California, and I feel the pain or the respiratory illness, and I get a tiny bit of that here. How is it possible that there's no molecules from London going all the way over here? But the energy can and does travel that way, and vice versa. I send healing energy to someone wherever they are, Buenos Aires, Hong Kong. It gets there, but it's not via the telephone line or winds blowing it over there.
Yeah, correct. Well, I tell you what, if everybody that's listening, if you're interested in Ed's work, he is a phenomenal healer. He does some really great work with the energy clearing. I can honestly attest to that. Ed, go ahead and announce the promotion that you're offering.
Okay. Well, Energy Center Clearing is the product that I referred to several times. It clears out your energy centers and flushes your energy body so you can attune with your own highest self and become more you. It's the best thing that I can offer to anyone. I think I've stressed it throughout this interview. That's what you want to do. You want to raise your vibration, and this helps you get there.
Especially right now. Now.
Yes.
Because of how much we are dumping.
Right. Unload it, and it just makes your path that much easier, less turbulent. And so I want to say to everyone, all of Alexandra's listeners, if you go to my website and I'll give you a discount code, you'll save $10 off the downloadable version of the Energy Center Clearing.
Okay.
So if you just go to energycenterclearing.com/E_C_C.html and order the downloadable version of Energy Center Clearing and use the code word, the discount code Galactic for Galactic Connection. You'll get $10 off automatically on your order.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, great. Well, thanks, Ed.
Well, thank you.
I hate to say it, this was a very enlightening conversation.
That's very punny. Yes, very good.
And we'll have to have you back on again. We'll get creative and come up with some other ideas. But I did want to thank you for your time, and everybody definitely check out his Mystic Warrior book. It is very, very entertaining. So
excellent.
Yeah. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for coming, Ed. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop me an email at galacticconnection.com regarding Ed and his work and what he offers, and we'll go from there, Ed.
Super. It was great to have you. Thank you for inviting me, Alexandra.
Yeah, thank you. You guys take care and have a great afternoon. Bye.